Happy Sunday, everybody. Yes, it's Sunday again. 2 Sundays in a row. I really have no excuse. Well, I guess I have an excuse. Usually I work from home Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday every week. But this week, holidays are coming, and we had our big holiday party at work on Thursday. And then Friday I had to go into the office because we were doing this massive office cleaning thing. I got a free lunch out of it, but it severely took away from my ability to stay awake past 8 p.m. So I got home, and I think I was awake for like 2 hours, and I just passed out Friday night. I have another show that usually gets done on Friday. That wasn't done. Did that yesterday. The Mandalorian Man. Please check it out at fanszoneexperts.com. And, that left me with this morning, finally, getting up and watching today's episode of Mad Men. And now it's nighttime. I took no notes. I watched it this morning. I'm talking at nighttime. I'm literally hiding in my bathroom right now. My puppy wants to play. And when she plays, she wants to pull at your pants and she wants to, like she pinches. She doesn't mean to. It's all playful. But usually it lasts for a little while, and then she passes out. So I'm going to go out. Wait, I'm going to walk out now and see what she is. Oh, she's playing. She's eating her antler. I'm going to go back in here. And I'm going to, hopefully she didn't notice me. If she did, I'm screwed. Okay, back in the bathroom. Now, I want to say a few things. First of all, today I watched episode 9, I hope I have that right, of season 6 of Mad Men, The Better Half. But before we go any deeper into this episode, I want to take a moment to not only listen to today's sponsor, but also to listen to some voicemails that I received from my friend, Raphael. Now, I have to warn you, Raphael, I did not get a chance to listen to all your voicemails before we play them. So the first time I'm going to hear them all is when I'm done the episode. So I'm going to pretend afterwards. Don't tell Raphael I'm doing this. I'm going to pretend that I heard them all, and I'm going to reply to them. I'm going to talk to them, but don't tell Raphael. Raphael, cover your ears. I probably should have said that first. But okay, let's take a moment to hear from today's sponsor and then hear from my best friend, Raphael.
Hello, this is Raphael, and I'm here to talk about the episode, The Better Half. I'd have to say this is probably one of my favorite episodes of the season. The constant pull of, understanding the better half of somebody. And we see it firsthand initially with Peggy as she's asked to make a decision about some type of strategy with Fleischmann's. And she's asked to immediately make a decision between two different strategies. And she quickly identifies that it's between Don's idea and Chaw's idea. And she immediately sees that she can't make that decision between both of those ideas. One, her old mentor, and two, her new mentor, who she is somewhat physically attracted to. We also see that Don is kind of battling his we see that Don is battling his better half as well. I really enjoyed the writing of this episode, particularly the writing meant for Don and Betty during their time at the camp the day before that Henry shows up. And it kind of, to be honest, this is definitely relatable now. It was set back in, the 60s, but looking at it from a relationship standpoint, it's definitely relatable now to relationships now in this day and age. Talking about your kids, how much they've changed, talking about what happened to you, what happened to me. And I thought it was very particular, that one line that Betty said, that poor girl, referring to Megan. She says, that poor girl doesn't even know. That she doesn't even know that loving you is not the way to get you. Which I thought was very interesting when you think about it. Don has grown up, to be honest, with a shitty life. And he doesn't know what love is. And that mentality has yielded him the type of man he is now in dealing with relationships. Doesn't really know what it's like to be loved. So how could he love somebody? And I think that resonated a lot with Don. And we see that when Don returns and he has that conversation in the balcony with Megan while the sirens are playing. Which coincidentally, I like to think that's the same siren that's taking Peggy and her ex to the hospital after being stabbed, which I thought was kind of funny. I was laughing through that. But we also see the other dilemma of the better half in Roger's case. Roger's dealing with the dilemma that, it's fun and games to be the grandfather, but it's hard to play that role when you weren't really a father yourself to your children. And Roger's daughter makes that perfectly clear. So he's trying to make things right based on that conversation with Joan. And we see that as well. So we all see this internal dilemma kind of assessments going on with a lot of major characters. We see that first with Peggy. We definitely see that with Don and Betty. We see that with Roger. And there's some other as well. But I would like to say that I really enjoyed this episode. The writing's great. The costume selection was unbelievable. And it really just kind of went deep into the psyches of all these individual characters. And the last thing I loved was Peggy's face at the end when she's expecting Ted to be, ecstatic or opportunistic that now that she's available and that boyfriendless. But the fact that he kind of responds with, don't worry, he'll get back out there. That look she gives is just priceless. All right, take care.
What a great sponsor and an even better series of voicemails. Raphael, you nailed it, especially that part when you talked about Don Draper and Betty and Peggy, Roger, Joan, Bob, maybe, and maybe Sneezy and Skippy. I'm not sure. I did hear part of your first one where you talked about this being one of your favorite episodes. And I have to say, I really enjoyed this episode too. A lot happened. I mean, a lot. And when I tell you that I watched this episode this morning and I don't remember how it started, I am being 100% honest with you. So I'm going to talk about it from character to character, like I've done in the past, because I'm not going to go linear. I'm not going to go the plot of the show. It's character to character to character. So why don't we go with Pete first? Pete is, he has stuff in this episode, but not a ton. The thing is, Pete is dealing with this power struggle that we seem to be seeing between Don Draper and Ted, right? Ted Shaw. Yes. He's kind of sitting there. He doesn't really know what his place is in this world. There's an argument at one point. Don and Ted are kind of trying to figure out the margarine and how to differentiate itself, and butter, and, is it price? Is it taste? Is it price? Is it taste? They bring Peggy in, and Peggy doesn't really want to get in between them. And Ted doesn't seem to care about that, and Don really took it personally. We'll see that later in the episode. And Pete is also trying to figure out what the hell Don is doing, what the hell Ted is doing, and why Harry just sat there and didn't say anything. And Harry's like, who cares? I'm just going to sit there and enjoy it. I'm going to be partner someday. He goes, we're a joke. We don't even have a name. He goes, we're the 27 Yankees, Harry said. People look at us as the big time. And that's great for headhunters. And that got Pete's attention. So Pete met with the same headhunter. Why not? And guess who it was? That mother ducker. Yes, Duck Phillips. I think that's his last name. It's been a while. I mean, he let his dog out because he's a drunk. I will never forgive him for that. He had a fling with Peggy. I will never forgive her for that. But now that he is a headhunter, he basically spelled it out to Pete about what he could get him, the jobs he could find for him. Like he could get him a head of accounts, but it was in like Wisconsin. And he's like, do you have anything on this planet? So it was just, I think it was just Pete feeling things out. Not much came of it, but, Duck tried to also give him some advice about the importance of family. And he's like, the important thing is family. And Pete says, family is a distraction. Pete just cares about enjoying his life and getting as much as he can. And he sees his wife and his kid as a distraction, which is sad. And Duck, it seems like, came to some realization. I don't know if he has his wife back. I don't know what he has with his kids. But it seems like he's come to some sort of peace. And he doesn't even work in advertising anymore. He works in headhunting for advertising firms. There was another moment where, and he said to him, to Duck, Duck said, you don't need this apartment. He goes, oh, believe me, I do. And he mentioned his mother. Later on, he goes to Joan for some advice. You don't see Joan and Pete interact all that much. Joan doesn't love Pete, but later on she mentions something about him that in a weird way, she says to Bob, and we'll get there, Pete's, I think he's the only one who's never lied to me. And Pete went to her just kind of asking for advice, as far as like, what do you think my place is here? And she's like, I really don't have time for this. I have things I have to do. He's like, want to get supper? He's like, I can't. I have plans. And it was more like Pete was trying to figure out his place and dealing with his mother. He has a lot going on that's distracting him, and he doesn't feel, is he present? Is he doing enough? Is he contributing enough? And that really, I think, is the end of Pete's moments in this episode. Now Joan, she had her moments with Pete, so we'll do Joan now. Joan had her moments with Pete. And then Joan said she had plans. And I think the only other time we see Joan is in her apartment with Bob. That's right, Bob. Now, they didn't say anything romantic was happening. So I don't know if anything romantic is happening. But Bob's hanging out hoping something romantic is happening. That I damn well am sure of. Or at least that's my assumption. And he's in his little shorts, and she's ready to go to the beach. Her, Bob, and Kevin. And what happens? Roger shows up. Now, we'll talk about Roger later. Roger, I think, is having issues with his children. I guess that's it for Joan. We'll stop there with Joan. Let's go back to Roger. Roger's daughter is at the firm, and she's letting her son, Roger's grandson, spend the day with him. So they're like going to have so much fun. They're going to go to the zoo. They're going to go to the movies. And Joan said, "Oh, so like any other work day." And it was funny when he had the grandson there. He goes, "So which one do you like?" He was pointing out all the secretaries, and the secretaries are giggling. And then Joan walks by, and he goes, "I'll tell you the one I like later." You can see he still loves Joan. So he spends the day with his grandson. You don't think much of it. And then he gets a call, and it is from his daughter, flipped out because he took his grandson to see Planet of the Apes. And now the kid is scared of everything, frightened of the dog because the dog has fur, scared of everything with fur. She's pissed off at Roger, and he's like, "What are you talking about? Don took his son. Everything was fine." He was laughing. I'll do the Dr. Zayas voice. He'll be fine. And she saw nothing of it. In fact, she said, "I don't, enough with this. You're not even going to..." He goes, "I care." He's trying to say he cared. And he yelled at her, like, "Listen, young lady, you don't get to talk to me like that." And she basically said, "Look, if you want to see your grandson, you can't just be the grandfather anymore. No more visits like that without the grandmother around." He basically took that from him. So it seems like something's happening where he's trying to reconnect. Okay. Did I miss something? Because in the episode title, description on Netflix. It says, Roger has a reoccurring dream and Joan goes to the beach. That's the entire Netflix description. I don't remember any dream with Roger. Did I fall asleep? I don't think so. Roger, got called and yelled at by his daughter. That's what I saw. Joan did go to the beach. That was like one moment that had nothing to do with anything, except that I think now that Roger can't be with his grandson, he realizes, or maybe he's with his grandson thinking about the fact that he has another son out there, little Kevin, Joni's kid. He shows up unannounced at Joan's apartment. That's when she's getting ready with Bob to go to the beach. You could see the look on his face. First of all, the best part is he looks at Bob and says, "Who are you?" And he's like, "It's Bob from the office. What are you doing here?" See, he didn't even know that Joan and Roger had any sort of relationship, any sort of friendship. And he's like, "Oh, I screwed up some paperwork. I'm in the area." She goes, "Why don't you go get the car ready?" She runs down, and he's like, "I brought this for my son." She goes, "You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't be around this anymore." He thinks that Ted is his son. Is that the dad's name? I don't know. Todd. Whatever. The soldier. He thinks that is his dad. His dad's a hero, and that's what I'm going to keep with him. And Roger's like, but I'm his dad, and you can see Roger still wants to be with him. Bill still wants to be with her. Didn't like Bob being there. He was like, "All right, well, I'll see you at work on Monday." She's like, "Yes, have a nice weekend." And Bob's like, "I didn't even know you had a relationship." So that was weird, but I felt bad for Roger because his first wife's gone, his second wife's gone. Sure, he likes to screw around with Megan's mom when she's in town. And now his grandkid doesn't want to be with him, and his little secret kid can't be with him. So it's probably a little rough for the guy. Did I mention Megan? Yeah, let's talk about Megan. So Megan has an expanded role with the soap opera. She plays twins, of course, because it's a soap opera. One with short blonde hair who is supposed to be sophisticated, and then the sister is the one who's the maid. The problem is she's having trouble differentiating between the two, as far as the producers and directors are concerned. And she ends up inviting that woman, Ted McGinley's wife, her co-star, over to run lines and talk about it. And she brings out wine. She wants to talk about it. And this woman just wants to make out with her. Remember, she's the one who wanted to do the swinging with Don and her husband. And Megan was like, "No." But then Megan touched her hand, and she goes in for another kiss. She goes, "No, you misread this." She goes, "Forget about it. You embarrassed me, blah, blah, blah." But Megan's big concern is she's afraid she's going to get fired. But he's like, just keep doing what you're doing. Just be yourself. Don't worry about it. It seemed like nothing much came of it. But she did open up a little bit about how with her husband, it hasn't been the same. He's been distant. He's been far away. And it's been rough on her. And then the girl tried to kiss her again, of course. Let's see. What else do we have here? Peggy. Let's talk about Peggy. Because we'll save the big Dawn stuff to the end. Peggy had a big episode. The big thing with Peggy is... she hates where she lives. I mean, there was constant sounds of violence outside of her apartment. Even where Dawn lives, you can hear the sirens. I love saying sirens. It's just my wife's late uncle, rest in peace, old timer, used to say sirens. So I say that now. I know that's not how it's said, but I love saying sirens. So the police sirens are going by, and you could just hear that just piercing into their conversation, and they don't even blink. They don't even blink at it. That's interesting. I never thought of that. Like Megan and Dawn don't blink when they hear the sirens. I can't keep saying it. When they hear the sirens blaring, they just keep going because the sirens aren't for them. They're passing through, heading up to where Peggy lives. That's where all the shit's going down, where there's violence and there's constant, assaults going on. In fact, Abe, her boyfriend, got assaulted by some guys. He got stabbed. And he didn't want to, but there's a cop there, and he didn't want to talk to the cop because he's a hippy-dippy. So he's very much like, I don't want to oppress them. They don't have any choice in life. This is all part of a story he's working on where he's trying to talk about the culture of things. But she's like, but criminals are criminals. You're not supposed to be helping criminals. You're not supposed to be, not reporting them. And she's like, I hate living here. I don't want to live here anymore. And then eventually he says, he says, fine, we can just get out of here. Because at one point he's boarding up a window that got smashed. And she thinks, they smashed the window because you talked to the police? But finally she says, I need to get out of here. I can't live here anymore. Now, at work, she's getting pulled between Dawn and Peggy. Dawn and Ted. The whole Abe thing has been bugging her. He's been getting on her nerves, and she really hasn't stopped thinking about Ted. So at one point, Ted brings her into the office and says, he apologized for the kissing. He says, I shouldn't have done that. She goes, well, have you not thought about it? And she's like, I have thought about it, but you have someone, I have someone. We can't be that way. She goes, I haven't thought about it at all. And then she admits, I have been thinking about it. And you can see Ted's been thinking about it too, but Peggy kind of pushes it out of their mind, says, we can work, don't worry about this. I think she regrets that. Dawn brings her into the office and says, like, what do we do? What are we paying you for? You have to, we need you to, figure this out when I ask you for your opinion. She's like, you're basically said you guys are in a pissing contest. You want it your way. Ted wants it to work. You want your way to work. Ted goes, Dawn's like, Ted wants his way to work too. It's the same thing. And the, later on in the episode, she's in her apartment. She's got this stick with a knife at the end. And she hears this crazy stuff going on. Police and screaming and yelling and violence. She's opening the window. Then she hears a noise behind her, turns, and she stabs Ted right in the chest with the knife. Now, Ted's going to survive. The next shot, she's like, oh my God, don't pull it out. Next shot, they're in an ambulance. It was actually kind of funny in a dark humor kind of way. He's got the knife sticking out of his chest, and he's like, if I die, she goes, you're not going to die. He comes to some realization that you're everything that I'm not. You're everything that I detest. You're in advertising. Why would I think you care about these things? Guess what? He dumped her with a knife sticking out of his chest in an ambulance with an awkward moment where the ambulance, the attendee in the back, the EMT was like, I don't want to be here. It's funny. He goes, you're not going to die. He's not going to die, right? And the EMT is like, I don't know. But it was a funny little moment. But Abe's gone. Abe's out of the picture, I guess. Ted, Peggy wants to move anyway. Peggy's been thinking about Ted, and finally Abe is gone. At the end of the episode, she comes in and it looks like her hair looked a little matted. Probably she had a long night with Abe at the hospital. Her hair looked like wet and everything. Like it was like she didn't look like she normally looked. She looked a little different. She comes into Ted's office. She says, I just want to let you know that I don't have anyone anymore. It's over with me and Abe. And Ted is like, well, you'll find someone. You ready to work? And he opens the door. He's like, hi, Dawn. Good morning. And the episode ends with Ted Peggy just leaving the office, realizing that she doesn't have Abe anymore. She doesn't have, she thought she was going to get Ted, and she's kind of just stuck in the middle of between Dawn and Ted for work. And she's staring into the empty conference room, and that's how the show ends. But the big storyline of this entire episode, to me, is Don Draper and Betty Francis. So, at the beginning of the episode, we see Betty and Henry are at some sort of fundraiser. When Henry's on the phone making some phone calls, a guy basically comes up to Betty and propositions her. Says, I want to spend some time with you all night. And remember when she was at a party when Henry came up and rubbed her pregnant belly. So this happens to Betty a lot. And Henry comes out and looks at the guy and he's like, what are you looking at? Oh, he's like, how you doing, Lou? This is how he talks. This is my Henry Francis. I'm going to go back into some Henry Francis. So they're in their car on the way home. He's like, can we have a little privacy? And the guy puts up the panel because apparently Henry gets a nice car. And he's like, I want to know everything he said to you. And she's like, he wanted to be with me. To everything. He grabs her by the chin. Not aggressive. Almost like this was a game they played. Because she said all night. And he just looked at her. And then boom, they started necking. And I'm assuming they made sex. I don't know this, but it's my assumption. Now, meanwhile, Betty, because Henry's busy, Betty has to head up to a camp for Bobby. And guess who else is going? Don Draper. Bobby's camp, Mom and Dad are going. They're going separately, but they're going. Don ends up stopping at a gas station, and the gas attendant is just staring off into the distance. And he sees this woman bent over in a car, and he's staring at her booty. And who gets up from the booty? But it's Betty's booty. Can you believe it's Betty's booty? I didn't believe that it was Betty's booty, that the booty, I'm trying to make something that isn't happening. And she looks at Don. She's like, oh. He's like, oh. And the gas station's like, oh. And they end up, talking for a few seconds and going. He's like, why don't you just follow me? They go to the camp together. Bobby's there. So Bobby's there with his mom. And this Bobby, I'm getting used to him now. He's a good little actor. And he, I don't know if he's going to be Bobby next year. I don't know what they're going to do. But he's spending a little time with his mom. And then Don comes in. And he goes, Dad, you came. That was so heartbreaking to me that he just didn't expect his dad to come. He's like, your mother didn't tell you? And she said, I wanted it to be a surprise. And they sing this song together. And it was like, I forget what it was. Father Franklin has 12 sons, and 12 sons have Father Franklin. And they're all doing it. They're just having fun together. And he's like, oh, that's Bobby 2. He goes, are you Bobby 1? He goes, no, I'm Bobby 5. And you realize all these kids are named Bobby, probably after Bobby Kennedy, I'm guessing. That's just like, I'm guessing that year or around those years, a lot of Roberts were born. And they had a nice time together, the three of them. No Sally, no Jean, just Bobby bonding with him, which was cool. Later on, and Don and her just looking at each other like smiling, realizing this was a nice moment. They could all appreciate it. And later on, Sally's hanging out her cabin, and she's like, oh, did you get a bottle? And Don goes, yeah, I have a bottle. Pours some in her Fresca. Betty Draper's drinking Fresca. She drinks a little, he drinks a little, and he's like, he kind of says like, I haven't, I forget what he said, but he came on to her, and she went, and she's like, oh, and she got up and she left and went into her room, her cabin. She left the door open. And who followed? But Donald Dick Whitman Draper. And guess what? For the first time since, I'm going to guess, in her parents' house, Don and Betty had sexual intercourse. They went for it. They did it. Now, Bobby never found out. They wake up the next day. They stop. They have a cigarette. Then they do it again. But they talked a little bit, and he's like, this was the best. Like, this was good. We were good like this. And Betty's like, yeah, I liked you. And then you'd always, it would always go downhill. I forget the exact wording, but it was really good. And he was like, why do people care so much about sex and loyalty? I could climb a mountain. Doesn't mean I love the mountain. She's like, mountains? That you think of it? And he goes, is that how you treat Megan? And he doesn't really say anything. She's like, oh, that poor girl. So she realizes that Dawn must be cheating on Megan, or has cheated on Megan. Ding, ding. She's right. But they have a nice little moment. He goes, I could cuddle with you here and feel just as much love. He goes, is that what you want to do? And he says, no, I would like to mount you and do it. I mean, this is what I heard. I don't know if it was actually said. So they do it some more. Boom, 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 boom. He wakes up the next day, and Betty's gone. He gets up, goes for breakfast. He looks over, and he sees Henry, and he sees Betty, and he goes, good morning. Like, good morning. And that was it. That was it. He just said, good morning, how you doing? And she's like, good morning. And he goes over and has breakfast by himself. And while he's eating breakfast by himself, he looks over at her, and she doesn't look over at him. She's having fun laughing with her husband. So it was almost like she said to him the night before, I love my life now. I love everything I have. And she doesn't want to lose that. And he could see that she seemed really happy with Henry. It was funny that they were talking the night before about Sally, and she's like, oh, Sally reminds me so much of you. I don't get that girl. And he goes, he reminds me of you. And she said, Henry thinks he reminds me of you. He goes, how does Henry know me? He goes, I don't know. She just says it reminds her of you. So that was an interesting thing. There was not much else at the camp. besides them having sex and looking at each other at breakfast. Later on, Dawn does come home, and Megan's out on the deck smoking a cigarette, and she's like, I just feel like there's a separation. There's something separate from us. And Don admitted it. He goes, I think there is too. And I don't know if he made it seem like he sees it and maybe he'll try to fix it. Did I cover everything in this episode? She mentioned, she just mentioned to the woman she was working with, Megan, how, when we worked together, it was fine. But now I've done my own thing, and he's just getting used to not seeing me because I'm more successful than when I started. And, it's becoming complacent. She made dinner for him, and he was like, let's just turn in and watch TV. She's like, okay. It was like there was just going through the motions. And maybe the fact that he saw Betty laughing with Henry, even though he thought maybe that me and Betty could get back together, maybe seeing that made him realize what he has at home. I don't know. Nothing seems to make him realize how good he could have it if he was just a good boy. Geez. This is a shorter episode, Not as long as my other ones. Now, I'm pacing in my bathroom. Now, I can't just sit still, and I'm not going to sit on my toilet. That would be disgusting. And that is all too much information. But you can listen to that on the Toilet Cast, that's coming soon to fansonexperts.com. I think I've covered everything. Let's just go through it again. Roger. I don't remember any dream, but he did screw up bringing his grandson to Planet of the Apes. And he wanted to see his real son, even though Joan is like, you can't. Bob seems to be in with Joan. Bob does go back to Pete later and says, listen, I just want to let you know that I have a male nurse who helped with my father. He's a naval nurse. And Pete was like, Joan shouldn't have said anything. He goes, don't blame Joan. She was worried about you and didn't know and just knew that I had connections, I think. But Pete's like, I hate when people, I love it because it's creepy, but I hate when people talk about their mother and call them mother to other people. I wouldn't even say it to my brother. I wouldn't say, mother came by. It's like, I would say ma or, I'd say ma, but I wouldn't say mother. But saying it to other people, not my mother, but just mother, is very Norman Batesian to me. And he says to Bob, he's like, is he a Spaniard from Spain? Because mother wouldn't approve otherwise. He goes, oh, he's very, I forget what he said, but he's very good. He's very cultured or something. It was something like degrading, but Bob was trying his best to steer around it. Bob seems good. I haven't seen any reason for me to hate him yet. We'll see. Usually people seem good until they become garbage. Except Ken. Ken, I'm still enjoying. We'll see. We'll always see. No Ken in this episode, though. And Peggy just went through a rough time, rough neighborhood, stabbed her boyfriend, who already got stabbed. Her boyfriend realizes it's not working out and dumps her. She basically throws herself at Ted. And I was saying, this is it. They're going to go for it. And boom, Ted denied her. Ted crushed her, and you could just see her heart breaking. And she's just standing in the middle of the office realizing, this is all I have, is this friggin' office. Does this work? I got nothing else. We'll see where that goes. I think I've covered just about everything. Maybe Don finally respects and realizes what he has with Megan. I doubt it. It's Don Draper. But my goodness, we only have 3-4 episodes left, and then we're on to the final season. I can't believe it. My friends, all my friends like Charlene, who retweet me all the time, Paul Gallagher, who was talking to me on Twitter, Claire, you just finished watching Mad Men for the first time, and it is astonishingly good. And Birdhouse Books, who always gives me likes and retweets on Facebook, on Twitter. I appreciate this, you guys listening and sticking with this, even as I ramble, whether it's in the car or on the porch or in the bathroom. I just appreciate the fact that people are out there listening to this. I can't believe it. This has been So much fun, and we're not done yet. I feel like the end is nigh. The end is nigh? That's a saying, right? But not yet. Not yet at all. In fact, coming up on the Christmas season, and I just want to say happy holidays to everybody listening, though I feel like, I can't believe I'm saying this. We have one more episode that's coming, but next week, Star Wars is coming on Friday. So I got to figure out a way. I have plenty of time. We'll getting this, because I just found out I did get tickets to Star Wars, but at 10 p.m. on Friday night. So yowzer, but don't worry. Your new episode will be hitting on Friday. I'm guaranteeing at this time, I won't let you down. This time, it's going to be Friday. But until then, I want to say to you that you can follow me on Twitter at MadeManPod. But you might be better off following me on Twitter at my main Twitter account, because that's the one that's going to keep going forever. And that's Geek Mentality. But everything I do is at my website, fansnotexperts.com. So I just want to say that I want to thank you. Oh, here we go. I'm in the voice. I want to thank you for sticking with me. I want to thank you for having the patience until Sunday. And I want to thank you for joining me. There it is. That's the word. I want to thank you for coming along with me as I strive to become a made man. I hope they didn't leave anything out in this episode.
Fans not experts.